Hey guys, it's Paradise, and today we're going to be talking about Avowed, the brand new RPG by Obsidian Entertainment. We got a chance to check out the game early, thank you to Xbox, so we wanted to share our experience and our thoughts on the game. So let's get right into it. Avowed is set in the lore-rich world of Eora. It's a high fantasy setting that will be very familiar to fans of Obsidian's Pillars of Eternity games. You take on the role of a godlike, someone who's been touched by the gods at birth, leaving them with rare physical attributes that are both equally revered and shunned. While most godlikes find it difficult to fit in amongst people of the world, you are given purpose by the Emperor of Adir himself, with your latest assignment being to venture to the Living Lands, which is an untamed frontier where the lawless tend to thrive. A mysterious affliction known as the Dream Scourge has threatened to consume the land, and it's up to us to unveil the origin of this mysterious plague, as well as to uncover the many secrets that the Living Lands has to offer. Now, right off the bat, it's clear that the world building is one of the key pillars of Avowed, and it does a fantastic job of immersing you into this world. Longtime fans of the setting will no doubt enjoy the many references throughout, and while we're fairly unfamiliar with the setting at large, we did find we could still enjoy the world building even more so as newcomers. This is in part thanks to the keyword feature present in the game, which is an excellent tool that was incredibly useful to help understanding any unfamiliar topics as the dialogue was even happening. Despite this though, it's fair to say that we didn't feel forced into having to digest everything, and that we found we could dive in as much or as little as we wanted to with this information, which we really did like. Another facet of the storytelling that stood out to us were the quests. From what we've played, the main story mission has been engaging, with meaningful choices throughout, and we've been surprised at how differently you could resolve many of the different situations, sometimes being able to have the complete opposite outcomes depending on what you decide to do. This is then further built on by having some of our previous choices influence other quests later down the line, such as letting a character live, which pays off in the form of being vouched for in the future, and we love this kind of impact. Much like many other great RPGs, how you build your character will also have an effect on what choices you have during quest dialogue. The game strays away from the norm of having a social stat or skill that many RPG fans will probably be used to. Instead, you can opt for specific dialogue choices that are locked behind 6 different attributes or your narrative background. For example, we were able to coerce people into getting what we wanted due to playing a more physically imposing character, but we were often locked out of choices that required a bigger focus on intelligence. These choices would sometimes have a small but tangible difference on your outcome, with things like getting more loot and gold, or allowing you to resolve things peacefully instead of things ending up in a fight. All of these things made it pretty rewarding to play a more specialized character, and we did see plenty of chances to use all 6 different attributes during different narrative sections. Storytelling aside though, let's talk about the gameplay and the game's various mechanics. We'll start off with your character building, as we did feel there was a good deal of variety here. Avowed uses familiar RPG elements to let you flesh out your character the way that you want to, with 3 distinct skill trees that you can mix and match between freely. On our playthrough, we opted to focus on a 2-handed weapons playstyle with a little dip into defensive magic and parrying to help keep us safe. These things were all split between the skill trees, but a lack of prerequisites for each meant it was no problem picking them up. This was great because it struck a good balance between simply picking and choosing what you want to do, while leaving room for combinations and different abilities that are definitely going to be satisfying for more experienced build crafters out there. This sort of design was also present within the 6 different attribute modifiers, each giving simple things in a vacuum. Things like extra health, damage, or attack speed, and these allowed you to shape your character to how you wanted them to be. With all of that said though, we were slightly let down by the combat itself. While you do gain many more abilities, companions, and gear throughout the game, the actual moment-to-moment combat did kind of feel like it was missing something. The game has several different mechanics to explore, such as an elemental damage system, blocking and parrying, even a stun mechanic, but a lot of the time it didn't feel distinctly meaningful between enemies. For the most part, our approach to the combat was the same. Buff up with a spell, push in, then smash things with our greatsword, parry incoming attacks, and take advantage of finishing moves whenever we got a stun. The game does have a decent variety of enemies, from spiders to lizard men and several different types of undead, but we just didn't feel that we needed to change our tactics too much to deal with them. That is, however, excluding the occasional defender type enemy that you would encounter that required a heavy attack to set off balance. The same could also be said about the bosses. Each of them did feel more like regular enemies with higher health, higher defenses, and an occasional special ability or two, which just wasn't enough to set them apart and elevate them to boss level in our opinion. While there is definitely a lot of fun you can have and a lot of enjoyment from developing your character to how you want to approach the situations and the combat at more of a basic level, we did feel like the enemies themselves didn't offer the same level of depth that you could put into your character in the game. But let's move on and talk about loot and gear. Avowed does a great job again when it comes to the variety here. There is a wide breadth of weapon types to choose from, each having their own quirks and playstyles. You have the ability to dual wield weapons, you could use magic with a shield in your offhand which opens up a variety of different ways to play, and you're able to have 2 different weapon loadouts that you can freely switch between. Where the items really shine though is in the multiple different gear slots available to your character. Each of these auxiliary pieces of gear, such as boots, gloves, and jewelry, all apply passive bonuses to your character, really letting you fine-tune your playstyle. On top of this, there are powerful one-of-a-kind unique items for every slot that provide much more potent and stronger passives, with some even modifying how certain mechanics in the game work. We found there was a good amount of these scattered throughout the game, enough to cater for pretty much most things that you would want to do. Each unique comes with its own lore, which really does further the world building, and the unique weapons can even be enchanted to be improved or completely changed in how you want them to be. This again gives you a wealth of options as the player when it comes to gearing and build crafting, although we did wish they went even further and allowed the other gear pieces to be enchantable as well. The way that the loot rarity is handled though is perhaps one of the more unique things that Avowed does, where loot is split into different quality tiers, which is a concept familiar to most people. But Avowed goes in a different direction and applies this same system to their enemies, where using lower tier gear versus higher tier enemies will greatly reduce your effectiveness, meaning that enemies that may look like a simple group of bandits may actually pose a great threat to you regardless of the level difference. This is an interesting way to do things because it pushes the power of balance away from levels and instead towards the gear that you currently have access to. While it is an interesting way to do things, there were definitely times where it felt near impossible to progress the main quest due to enemies taking so much less damage, and given the main way to increase your gear was via gathering supplies and using the crafting system, there were times where we had to put our adventure on hold in order to go out and gather and upgrade our stuff. Now this wasn't necessarily a bad thing though, as the exploration is definitely one of Avowed's strong points. There's a plethora of things to explore and discover, where venturing off the beaten path always rewards you in some way. Between finding different routes to tackle an upcoming battle, to gather loot and supply chests, there were also powerful unique items and passive buffs that you could get, meaning exploring was never a bad idea in this game, and we always found ourselves taking a bunch of time exploring every nook the game offered. Pairing this with the ability to mantle and parkour, we were just overall impressed by how vertical the game could be at times. There were also many side quests on offer that didn't automatically mark where you need to go, usually involving a treasure hunt of some kind, and these would instead give you hints in the form of cryptic riddles or illustrations, which we think will be fun for many players who enjoy solving these kinds of things. Now we will touch on companions. Avowed does a great job with its 4 companions, and each have their own views and moral compass that sets them apart from one another. There's a great mix of humor and seriousness throughout, and we found ourselves overall comparing it to the vibe of the Mass Effect series. The companions will react to your choices throughout the game and change their opinion on you depending on how you act. After particular meaningful moments, they even want to speak to you in your camp, giving you an opportunity to either build or lose rapport with them depending on your responses. This can lead to tangible bonuses like stat increases, so it's important to interact whenever you get the chance. In combat though, companions will provide useful abilities, which you can quick slot into your bar, letting you use their unique abilities to give you that edge, and they have their own skill trees that you can customize. Overall, we would say Avowed is a very solid RPG, with its many different choices and its branching storyline offering some great replayability. While there were some key things that felt like missed opportunities, a majority of what we played did feel pretty good. The game does a good job at keeping things simple, but still offering the complexity that we want to see in an RPG. and as such it feels enjoyable for both newcomers and longtime fans of the universe, so Avowed has actually been a blast to play and we did enjoy our time, even if we felt like some things could have done with a bit more depth. The game does release on February 18th, so it's not too far away, and we really hope you guys enjoyed this rundown of our thoughts, impressions, and overall review of the game. Here at Arix Gaming, we're two friends who love to play games. You have me, Paradise, as well as 26.
Our goal is to keep the videos as concise as possible by cutting out any of the fluff and focusing on what really matters with high quality videos.
So make sure you're subscribed down below for more videos on your favorite games coming very, very soon.